She stood there, clutching her little rocket made of soda cans and tape. And the whole class laughed. Science isn't for girls like you, Amara. Maybe stick to something simpler. They called her dream silly. They called her idea impossible. But years later, NASA called her name. The morning sun poured through the half-broken windows of Jefferson Middle School, washing the dusty hallway in gold. The bell had rung minutes ago, and the sound of chatter, shoes squeaking, and lockers slamming filled the air. But one sound stood out, the soft footsteps of a girl carrying a box that looked too big for her thin arms. Her name was Amara Johnson. She was 12 years old, small for her age, with deep brown skin, tightly braided hair, and eyes full of ideas she didn't know how to explain yet. Inside the box she held so carefully was her science fair project, a solar-powered water purifier. It was made from soda bottles, tin foil, and pieces of clear glass she'd found behind a junkyard. The base was a piece of old plywood her uncle had given her. It didn't look fancy, but it worked. For a week she'd been testing it in her small backyard, using muddy water from the creek that ran behind their home. She'd watched sunlight hit the foil, warming the bottles until droplets of clear water formed on the inside. She tasted one. It was clean. It wasn't just a project. It was proof that she could make something out of nothing. When she walked into the classroom, kids were already setting up their projects. Volcanoes with real smoke, robots with blinking lights, solar systems made of foam balls painted in perfect colors. Her project looked small beside them. As she placed the box on her desk, a voice called out, "Yo, Amara, what's that?" "A trash can." Laughter broke out. Amara's hands tightened around the box. She looked down, pretending not to hear. Mr. Henson, the science teacher, stood near his desk flipping through a clipboard. He was tall, with slick gray hair and a sharp nose. His glasses hung low on his face, and his expression never seemed kind. "Settle down, class," he said. "Let's see some science." One by one, students presented their projects. When it was Amara's turn, her heartbeat quickened. She carried her purifier to the front of the room, her hands trembling slightly. She took a deep breath. "This is my solar-powered water purifier." Mr. Henson interrupted before she could finish. "Solar-powered, you say?" "Yes, sir." He peered down at the soda bottles, foil, and crooked pieces of wood. "And you made this yourself?" "Yes, sir. It uses sunlight and condensation to clean dirty water." Mr. Henson sighed, rubbing his temples. "Amara, we're doing science projects, not our class. What is this supposed to prove?" The room went quiet for a second before laughter rippled through it again. Amara's face flushed. "It actually works," she said, voice cracking. "If you pour dirty water in—" "Enough," he said sharply. "We'll move on. Let's not waste time." The laughter grew louder. Amara wanted to disappear. She wanted the floor to swallow her whole. As she turned to take her seat, one of the girls whispered, maybe she should have cleaned her clothes before cleaning water. The class roared with laughter again. Amara sat down slowly, keeping her head down. She didn't cry. Not yet. But her throat burned. Mr. Henson didn't call her name again for the rest of the class. He didn't even look her way. When the bell rang, everyone rushed out, chattering about who would win the fair. Amara stayed behind, gently packing her project back into the box. The foil had bent. One of the bottles cracked when she lifted it. Mr. Henson glanced up from his desk. "Next time, Amara," he said dryly, "try something more appropriate." She nodded without looking at him. "Yes, sir." Then she left. The hallway was empty. Her shoes squeaked softly on the linoleum floor as she walked to her locker. She could still hear their laughter echoing behind her. When she stepped outside, the wind hit her face cold, sharp, and full of noise. She walked home slowly, holding the box tight to her chest. Halfway there, she stopped at the creek, the same one she'd used for her experiments. The water was brown and full of debris. She knelt, scooped some up, and looked at it glinting in the light. Then she whispered to herself, "One day they'll see." She didn't know what she meant exactly, but she felt it deep down, that small, stubborn spark that refused to go out. Home was a small 2-bedroom apartment at the edge of town. The paint was chipped, the stairs creaked, and the heater made a sound like someone coughing. But it smelled like love, a mix of fried cornbread and laundry soap. Her mother, Rosa Johnson, was sitting at the table in her janitor's uniform, sipping tea. She was exhausted but smiled as soon as Amara walked in. "Hey, baby," Rosa said. "How was the fair?" Amara set the box on the table and forced a smile. "It was fine." Rosa looked at her closely. "You sure?" Amara's voice cracked. "He laughed at me, Mama." Rosa frowned. "Who?" "My teacher. He said it looked like trash." Everyone laughed. Rosa got up slowly, walked over, and crouched beside her daughter. She looked at the bent foil, the cracked bottle, and then back at Amara. "This what they laughed at?" she asked softly. Amara nodded, wiping her eyes. Rosa smiled. "Then they don't see what I see." "What do you see, Mama?" "I see a girl who built something out of nothing. I see a scientist. I see my baby thinking big." Amara sniffled. "It doesn't matter. Nobody cares." Rosa lifted her chin gently. "Baby, listen to me. People laugh when they don't understand. They laughed at the man who built the airplane. They laughed at the woman who said she'd go to space. Let them laugh. You just keep building." Amara's eyes filled with tears. She threw her arms around her mother. "I just wanted him to see it worked. One day, he will," Rosa whispered. "And when he does, he won't believe his eyes." That night, after dinner, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The streetlight outside flickered through her window, casting moving shadows on the wall. She thought about the classroom, the laughter, the humiliation, but she also thought about her mother's words. Let them laugh. You just keep building. So she got up quietly, tiptoed to the kitchen, and opened the box. She bent the foil back into place, fixed the bottles, and whispered to herself, "You're going to work again." And she kept fixing. The clock struck midnight. Then 1. Then 2. By morning, the project sat on the kitchen table, repaired, shining faintly in the dawn light. She smiled for the first time in days. Her mother woke up, saw her there, and grinned. "Didn't I tell you? Scientists don't sleep." Amara giggled softly. "I'll sleep when it works." "It already does, baby," her mother said. "You just don't see it yet." Amara didn't understand then, but she would. One day. She just didn't know that the same teacher who laughed at her would one day be standing in front of TV, staring in shock as NASA called out her name. And that laugh, that cruel, echoing laugh, would come back to him like a ghost. Only this time, it wouldn't be mocking. It would be the sound of awe. The morning after the science fair, the world looked the same, but to Amara, it felt smaller. The laughter from her classmates still echoed in her ears. She moved slower that day, her shoulders lower, her eyes dimmer. Her mother, Rosa, noticed it right away. "Come sit with me, baby," she said as Amara came into the kitchen. The small apartment smelled like burnt toast and cleaning bleach. Rosa's uniform hung neatly on the back of a chair, ready for another double shift. Amara sat, head down. "I don't want to go to school today." Rosa poured her coffee, added a spoon of sugar, and looked at her daughter. "You have to, Amara. Dreams don't grow in bed." "They laughed at me, Mama. My teacher said my project looked like trash." Rosa sighed. She'd heard this tone before, the one that carried both anger and heartbreak. "And what did you say?" "I didn't say anything." "What could I say?" Rosa leaned forward, her eyes soft but firm. "You could say, just wait and see." That's what I used to say when people told me I'd never make it through the week cleaning offices. Just wait and see. Amara frowned. "But you didn't make them stop laughing." "No," Rosa said, smiling gently. "But I made sure they didn't break me." The kettle whistled. Rosa poured hot water over oatmeal and stirred. She placed a bowl in front of Amara. "Eat, baby. You can't change the world on an empty stomach." Amara ate quietly. She didn't want to admit it, but her mother's words helped. A little. After breakfast, Rosa packed her cleaning gloves, her lunch, and kissed Amara on the forehead. "When they laugh, you listen. But you keep walking. One day, they'll be the ones clapping." When the door closed, Amara looked at her project again. It sat in the corner by the window, half broken but still shining in the sunlight. She picked up one of the bottles and whispered, "I'll make you better." That day, she went back to the creek after school. She didn't care about grades or ribbons anymore. She wanted to understand why her purifier worked. She wanted to prove, even if only to herself, that she could do what others couldn't see. Each afternoon became her quiet ritual. Books from the library, experiments in the kitchen sink, sketches in a tattered notebook. Sometimes the purifier worked perfectly. Sometimes it failed completely. But each time she failed, she learned something new. And in those small, silent hours, while her mother mopped office floors and emptied trash bins, Amara started to build something even stronger than science. She built faith in herself. One night, as Rosa returned home past midnight, she found Amara asleep at the kitchen table, head resting on her open notebook. The purifier was still beside her, glinting in the light of a flickering bulb. Rosa smiled softly, brushed Amara's curls back, and whispered, "Keep dreaming, my baby genius." Then she draped a blanket over her shoulders and turned off the light. What neither of them knew was that those long, quiet nights, the tired mother, the dreaming daughter, the tiny kitchen filled with makeshift inventions, were the foundation of something bigger than both of them. The world might not see it yet, but greatness was growing in that small apartment, one experiment at a time. The following year, the school halls felt colder. The posters were the same: "Science Fair, coming soon," written in big, colorful letters. But this time, Amara didn't look twice. She still sat in the same third-row desk, same scuffed sneakers, same hand-me-down backpack. Only her eyes were different. They didn't dart around for approval anymore. They watched, listened, calculated. Her old science teacher, Mrs. Chapman, had retired. A new teacher had taken over the class, Mr. Ellis, a tall man in his mid-30s with warm brown eyes and a voice that sounded like a song when he spoke. On his first day, he wrote on the board, "Science isn't about knowing. It's about asking." Then he turned to the class. "Who here has ever asked a question that got you in trouble?" A few hands went up. Giggles. Mr. Ellis smiled. "Good. That means you're scientists already." Amara looked up. That was the first time a teacher had said something that made her heart lift instead of sink. Later that week, he noticed her in the back of the room, quietly sketching in her notebook. "Amara, what are you working on?" She hesitated. "Just an idea." He stepped closer. "May I see?" She opened the notebook. Diagrams filled the pages, water flow systems, filter layers, a makeshift turbine. Notes were written in tiny letters along the margins. Mr. Ellis studied them for a long moment. Then he said softly, "Did you make this?" Amara nodded. "I tried last year. It worked kind of, but my teacher said it looked messy." "Messy?" He chuckled. "Messy is how invention begins. You know who else had messy notebooks?" Amara shrugged. "Einstein, Curie, Elon Musk probably still does." She smiled for the first time that day. The next day, Mr. Ellis asked her to stay after class. When everyone left, he leaned against his desk and said, "You know, I used to be like you. Quiet, always thinking, always tinkering. My mom used to get mad because I broke radios to see what was inside." "What happened?" He laughed. "I built better ones." He nodded toward her notebook. "You've got something special, Amara. That water purifier, it's clever. I think we should rebuild it properly." Her eyes widened. "For the fair. For the world," he said. That afternoon, they stayed behind. He showed her how to draw cleaner schematics, how to measure ratios for filtering layers, and how to test water purity using simple chemical drops. Every week, they worked together after school. Mr. Ellis found old lab supplies from the storage closet, dusty beakers, filters, and pH test strips. Amara brought bottles from home and the same creek water she had once scooped with her bare hands. It was no longer a child's project. It was an experiment, something real. One evening, as they watched clean water drip from the final test tube, Amara whispered, "It works. It really works." Mr. Ellis smiled proudly. "You didn't just build a purifier, Amara. You built persistence." She looked up at him. "But do you think anyone will care?" He rested a hand on the table. "People always care, eventually. You just have to give them a reason to look your way." A few weeks later, the district science fair arrived again. The gym buzzed with chatter. Rows of projects lined the floor: volcanoes, posters, robots. The judges walked slowly, clipboards in hand. Amara stood quietly beside her table, hands trembling slightly. Her project was simple: no flashy lights, no expensive materials. Just her purifier, a clear jar of dirty creek water, and a clean glass beside it. When her turn came, the first judge glanced at the title card. EcoPure, portable water filtration for underserved communities. Interesting, he said. You designed this? Amara nodded. Yes, sir. He leaned in as she poured the dirty water into the device. Slowly, drop by drop, clear water emerged from the other end. The judge frowned slightly. And this removes contaminants? Yes, Amara said quickly. Not all, but it removes bacteria and debris. I tested it with samples from our local creek. Another judge, a woman with silver glasses, took a sip of the clean water. Her eyebrows rose. This is impressive. Where did you learn this? Books, Amara replied. And a lot of mistakes. They chuckled. The woman smiled warmly. That's how real scientists learn. When the results were announced, Amara didn't expect anything. She'd already told herself she'd be okay walking home empty-handed again. But when they called her name for first place, she froze. Amara Cole for EcoPure. The applause hit her like thunder. Mr. Ellis clapped the loudest. As she walked up to the stage, she saw her mother standing in the back of the crowd, wearing her janitor uniform, eyes shining with tears. For the first time, Amara didn't feel small. She felt infinite. That victory changed everything. A local newspaper wrote a small article titled, Teens Water Purifier Wins District Fair. It wasn't front-page news, but it was enough. A local university professor, Dr. Lena Morales, saw it and reached out to the school. She asked to meet the young inventor. When Amara arrived at the university lab, her eyes widened. It was the first time she'd seen a real research facility. Microscopes, test benches, machines that hummed with quiet power. Dr. Morales, a Latina woman in a white coat, smiled warmly. So, you're the genius from Lincoln High. I'm not a genius, Amara said softly. Dr. Morales crouched slightly so their eyes met. Then let's just say you think like one. She showed Amara around the lab. We've been studying low-cost filtration methods for developing regions. Your design, simple, accessible. It's exactly what the world needs. You did this without any funding. Yes, ma'am. Dr. Morales shook her head in disbelief. You remind me of me when I started. You see solutions, not limits. Then she said something that would change Amara's path forever. How would you like to work here after school? Just as a volunteer. You'd learn, experiment, maybe even publish one day. Amara's mouth fell open. Work here. Dr. Morales smiled. Yes, here. Scientists start somewhere. Why not you? The next few months were the most exciting of her life. Every afternoon, after classes, she took the bus to the university lab. There, she learned to test pH, analyze water composition, and use microscopes to identify bacteria. She watched graduate students in awe, how they discussed, argued, solved problems together. Dr. Morales treated her like an equal. Remember, Amara, she said once, science doesn't care how rich you are or where you come from. It only cares how hard you work to understand. Amara carried those words with her every day. Her confidence grew. So did her dreams. At home, Rosa still worked nights, but she smiled more now. Every newspaper clipping of Amara's achievements went on the fridge. Sometimes Rosa would sit by the window and whisper, God, thank you for giving her more than I ever had. But not everyone shared that pride. At school, some students started to mock her differently. Oh, look, the NASA girl, one boy said. Hey, Amara, when you build your spaceship, take me with you, another joked. Amara tried to laugh it off, but deep down, the teasing still stung. One afternoon, Mr. Ellis caught her staring out the window, quiet again. He asked, You okay? Yeah, just tired. He pulled up a chair. You know what success does, Amara? What? It makes noise. People will always have something to say. But remember, you're not walking their path. You're paving it. She smiled faintly. You sound like my mom. He grinned. Then, she's a smart woman. By the end of senior year, Amara's project had won state-level recognition. She was invited to present at a youth innovation conference in Washington, D.C. When she told her mom, Rosa dropped the mop she was holding. Washington? As in the capital? Yes, Mama. They're paying for my flight and hotel. Dr. Morales will be there too. Rosa hugged her tightly. My baby, look at you. All those nights at that kitchen table, She wiped a tear. You're making the world see what I've seen all along. Amara smiled, whispering, I'm just getting started. At the conference, surrounded by hundreds of brilliant young minds, Amara felt both tiny and powerful. Her presentation was simple, but her voice was steady. She spoke about clean water, about poverty, about how science could save lives in places where people were forgotten. When she finished, the audience clapped, not politely, but with genuine warmth. One of the judges approached her afterward. Young lady, he said, handing her a card. We're from NASA's Innovation Outreach Program. We'd like to stay in touch. Amara blinked, speechless. NASA? He smiled. We look for thinkers like you. She held that card as if it were gold. For the first time, the word that once felt impossible began to feel real. That night, in her hotel room overlooking the Capitol lights, Amara called her mother. Mama, yes, baby. They said they might want to work with me. NASA. Rosa was silent for a moment. Then her voice broke with joy. I told you, Amara. One day they'd clap. One day they'd see. Tears filled Amara's eyes. I wish you could see this view, Mama. It's beautiful. I can picture it, Rosa said softly. But remember, no view is higher than the ground you came from. Amara looked out at the stars glittering above the city. She whispered, I know, Mama. That's why I'll never stop looking up. The days after the conference felt like a dream that refused to end. Amara returned home to her small apartment, but something inside her had changed. The world no longer felt far away. It felt open, like a door she could finally see through. She kept the NASA business card tucked safely inside her notebook. Every night, she took it out and stared at the logo, the red swoosh over the blue planet, like a promise whispered by the universe itself. Dr. Morales noticed the light in her eyes the moment she returned to the university lab. So, she said with a smile, did Washington treat you well? Amara laughed softly. I think it changed me. Good, Dr. Morales said. Because change means growth. And growth means you're getting ready for the next chapter. She walked over to her computer, typing something quickly. By the way, that judge who spoke to you? He emailed me. NASA's Outreach Division wants to invite you to their summer internship program. Amara froze. Wait, like NASA? Dr. Morales grinned. Yes, NASA. Amara's heart pounded. But I'm still in high school. I don't even know if I'm qualified. Dr. Morales cut her off gently. You're more than qualified, Amara. They saw your potential. They don't invite students like you because of grades. They invite you because of how you think. Amara couldn't speak. Her mouth opened, but only a whisper came out, NASA. A month later, she stood in front of the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland. Her hands trembled as she clutched her backpack straps. The building looked like something from a dream, sleek, white, endless glass reflecting the summer sun. Interns buzzed around her, chatting about coding languages, propulsion theories, and lab safety. Most of them wore university badges, MIT, Stanford, Caltech. Amara's badge just said Lincoln High. When she walked inside, she could feel eyes on her. Not unkind, but curious. She didn't look like the others. She was younger, darker, quieter. A tall man in a gray NASA polo approached. You must be Amara Cole, he said, smiling. I'm Dr. Reed, one of the lead engineers in environmental systems. We were very impressed with your purifier project. Amara smiled nervously. Thank you, sir. I'm still learning. He nodded. Good. Never stop. He led her through wide hallways filled with models of rockets and spacecrafts. Posters lined the walls. Perseverance rover, Artemis mission, back to the moon. As they entered the lab, the air smelled faintly of metal and ozone. Engineers in white coats worked around glowing monitors and robotic arms. Dr. Reed gestured to an empty desk. This is yours for the summer. You'll be working with our team on sustainable water systems for long-duration missions. Her eyes widened. For space. He smiled. Exactly. Clean water matters out there, too. The first few days were overwhelming. Every word she heard sounded like another language. Microfiltration membranes, reverse osmosis, contamination protocols. At night, she returned to her dorm room exhausted. She'd sit on her bed, notebook open, replaying the day's lessons over and over until they made sense. Some nights, she cried quietly, afraid she didn't belong. But then she'd remember her mother's words. No view is higher than the ground you came from. She'd whisper to herself, "You built something from nothing, Amara. You belong anywhere." And the next morning, she'd wake up before everyone else, walk into the lab early, and study alone. Soon, her curiosity started to turn heads. One morning, Dr. Reed found her at her station, staring at a complex filter design. "What's wrong?" he asked. Amara bit her lip. "I was thinking, we use these membrane layers to separate particles in space systems, right? Right. But what if we added an activated carbon stage? It could remove chemical traces that normal filters miss, like ammonia buildup from recycled water. It'd make the taste cleaner and reduce contamination." Dr. Reed raised an eyebrow. "That's actually brilliant. Where'd you get that idea?" Amara smiled shyly. "From my mom's old coffee filter. She used charcoal once when we ran out of paper filters. It worked better." He laughed. "Sometimes the best ideas don't come from textbooks." A few days later, he presented her modification at a team meeting and credited her. "She's only 17, he said proudly, and she just solved a problem we've been testing for months." The room burst into applause. Amara flushed red, smiling awkwardly. For the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like part of something extraordinary. Weeks turned into months. Amara spent every spare moment learning how water systems were built into spacecrafts, how astronauts recycled fluids, how life support systems worked under zero gravity. She found beauty in the details, in how small pieces connected to create something vast, delicate, and alive. One night, she stayed late after everyone had left. She watched a rocket test through the lab window, a thin beam of flame cutting into the dark sky. She whispered, "One day I'll build something that flies." She didn't know someone was listening. Dr. Reed leaned in the doorway. "You already are," he said softly. She turned, startled. He smiled. "Everything we do here, it starts small. One filter, one spark, one person who refuses to give up." When the internship ended, the team threw her a small farewell gathering in the lab. There were cupcakes, confetti, and laughter. Dr. Reed handed her a sealed envelope. "From NASA. Don't open it here. You'll want a quiet moment." She thanked him, trying not to cry. That night, back in her dorm room, she tore open the envelope. Inside was a letter printed on NASA stationery. She read the first line aloud. "We are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a recipient of the NASA Young Innovator Fellowship for Future Engineers." She gasped. The letter continued. "This fellowship includes full funding for your undergraduate studies in engineering and a guaranteed summer placement at NASA." Her knees went weak. She sat down on the bed, shaking. Her mother called just as tears rolled down her cheeks. "Mama," she whispered, voice trembling, "they're sending me to college. For free. NASA's paying for it." There was silence on the line, then a sound of soft, uncontrollable sobbing. "My baby," Rosa said, her voice breaking. "I told you the world would see. I told you." Amara pressed the letter to her chest. "We did it, Mama. We really did." The years that followed were a blur of hard work and triumph. Amara attended Howard University, studying aerospace engineering. She excelled, not because she was the smartest, but because she never stopped asking questions. Her peers admired her. Professors called her a force of quiet brilliance. During her second year, she published her first research paper with Dr. Morales on affordable water purification systems for space habitats and disaster zones. The paper gained attention from both humanitarian organizations and aerospace circles. The girl once laughed at in a classroom was now quoted in scientific journals. And still, every holiday, she went home to her mother, who still worked part-time, even though Amara begged her to rest. "I like keeping busy," Rosa would say. "But when you come home, I sit by the window and wait for the stars to blink, because I know one of them belongs to you." By her final year, Amara received an email that made her heart skip a beat. It was from NASA's Johnson Space Center. "We would like to invite you to join our environmental systems team for the Artemis program, our mission to return humans to the moon." She stared at the screen for a full minute before whispering, "The moon." When she called her mom, Rosa screamed so loudly that the neighbors came knocking. "The moon, Rosa?" one of them asked through the door. Rosa laughed through tears. "Yes, the moon. My daughter's going to the moon." Amara laughed too, wiping her face. "Not going there, not yet. Just helping build Waddle, take them there." Her mother said softly, "That's close enough, baby. That's close enough." When Amara arrived at Johnson Space Center, she walked through the enormous rocket hangar where engineers worked on components for the Artemis spacecraft. The scale of it all left her breathless. Giant fuel tanks, steel frameworks, robotic arms welding under blue sparks. She looked around and whispered, "This is it. This is what dreams look like up close." As she stood there, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "I knew I'd see you here one day." She turned. It was Dr. Reed. His hair was grayer now, but his smile was the same. "Dr. Reed," she exclaimed. He chuckled. "You've come a long way, Amara." "So have you," she said. He grinned. "They promoted me to chief engineer last year. And guess what?" "What?" "You're on my team now." Her jaw dropped. "You're kidding." He shook his head. "Nope. Welcome to the Artemis program." Months passed. Amara worked on designing a new closed-loop water recycling system, one that could support astronauts for months in deep space. The prototype combined her teenage purifier idea with advanced filtration technology she'd learned at NASA. Her design was lightweight, durable, and cost-effective. When she presented it to the board, one of the senior directors said, "This could change how we sustain life in space." Amara smiled humbly. "It's just clean water, sir." Dr. Reed leaned over. "Sometimes clean water is all that keeps humanity alive." They approved the design. It was officially named the Cole Filtration System. Her name, the same one that once made a teacher laugh, was now engraved on a component of a spacecraft heading for the moon. The sun over her hometown looked exactly the same, that soft, golden haze that turned the cracked sidewalks into lines of light. Years had passed, yet nothing seemed to change. The same corner store, the same tired bus stop, the same laughter of children running through the narrow streets. Only one thing was different. This time, when Amara stepped off the bus, she wasn't the little girl with secondhand shoes and a broken science project. She was engineer Amara Cole, NASA fellow, soon-to-be rocket systems designer. But as she looked around, the weight of memory softened every step. Her mother still lived in their small apartment, the one with the flickering porch light and the smell of coffee that never left. When Rosa opened the door and saw her daughter standing there in a crisp white shirt, with a NASA badge clipped to her chest, her eyes filled with tears. "My baby," she whispered, pulling her in. "You came home." Amara hugged her tightly. "Always, Mama." The kitchen looked the same, too. The old wooden table where she had once cried over failed experiments, the chipped mug with her mother's initials, the shelf where they'd kept her school trophies. Rosa poured coffee and sat across from her. "You look taller," she teased. Amara laughed. "You say that every time." "Well," Rosa smiled, "maybe the stars stretched you." They both laughed, the sound easy and warm. After a quiet moment, Rosa said softly, "They're talking about you everywhere, you know. The papers, the news. The girl who built her dream. You made this whole town proud." Amara looked down, a little embarrassed. "I just built what needed to exist." Her mother reached across the table and touched her hand. "And that's what makes you special. You didn't do it to be seen. You did it to help." That afternoon, Amara decided to take a walk past her old school. Lincoln High looked smaller than she remembered. The red bricks dull, the flagpole rusty. But as she walked through the gates, old memories came rushing back. The laughter, the whispers, the humiliation of that day when she stood with her homemade water purifier and everyone laughed. Her steps slowed when she reached the science wing. The door to the classroom was slightly open. Inside, she could hear voices, a group of students chatting, and a familiar tone beneath them. She peeked inside. There he was, Mr. Talbert, the same teacher. A little older, hair grayer, voice still sharp. He was helping a student adjust a microscope. His tone was softer than before, less dismissive, more patient. For a moment, Amara thought about walking away. What was the point of looking back? She had forgiven him in her heart long ago. But something made her step forward. She knocked gently on the door. Mr. Talbot turned. Yes. When he saw her, his expression froze. Then changed, confusion, recognition, disbelief. Miss Cole, he said slowly. Amara smiled politely. Hello, Mr. Talbot. It's been a long time. He blinked. I saw your name in the paper. You work for NASA now. Yes, sir. I do. The students turned, whispering. One of them gasped. You work for NASA? Amara nodded with a small laugh. I'm part of the Artemis Environmental Systems team. Mr. Talbot adjusted his glasses, his hands trembling slightly. Well, I remember your project. The purifier. So do I, she said gently. It was the first thing I ever built that worked. He swallowed. You must think I was cruel back then. Amara looked around the classroom. The same posters, the same lab tables. I think you didn't see what I saw, she said. But maybe you've learned to look differently now. He exhaled slowly. You're right. I did learn. More than I'd like to admit. One of the students raised her hand shyly. Miss Cole, can I see what you made? Amara smiled. I didn't bring it, but I could show you pictures. She pulled out her tablet and showed them images of her prototype purifier of her NASA lab, of astronauts testing her design. The students gathered around, eyes wide. That's your invention? One boy asked. It's going to the moon? Amara nodded. It's part of the system that will help astronauts recycle water in space. The room went quiet for a moment. Then softly she said, and it all started here, in this room. Mr. Talbert's eyes glistened. I owe you an apology, Amara. I should have encouraged you. Instead, I made you doubt yourself. I was wrong. Amara met his gaze kindly. Maybe you were. But if you hadn't laughed that day, I might never have worked this hard. So, thank you. He looked stunned. You're thanking me? She smiled. For teaching me resilience. The students clapped, some smiling, others whispering in awe. As she turned to leave, Mr. Talbot said, Amara, before you go, would you mind saying something to my class? About not giving up? She paused at the door, then nodded. She turned to the students. Listen, she began softly. You'll meet people who doubt you. You'll fail, you'll be laughed at, and sometimes you want to give up. But the world doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the one who keeps working in silence until the noise fades away. The room was silent. Every student listened wide-eyed. And when they finally see what you've built, she added, don't be angry. Be proud, because you turned their laughter into fuel. After she left the school, Amara walked toward the old community park. The benches were cracked, the grass overgrown, but the sky above was breathtaking, wide, endless, painted in streaks of gold and blue. She sat quietly, watching children chase each other, remembering her own days of running barefoot through the same grass. An old voice called from behind. I thought that was you. She turned. It was Mr. Ellis. Her heart leapt. Mr. Ellis. He looked almost the same, maybe a little heavier, a few more gray hairs, but the same warmth in his eyes. He laughed. You think I missed the day the whole town finds out NASA has one of ours? She hugged him tightly. You're the reason I'm here. You were the first person who believed in me. He smiled softly. You were easy to believe in. They sat on the bench, watching the sunset. I heard you visited the school, he said. She nodded. Yeah, it felt strange, like stepping into a memory that doesn't fit anymore. He chuckled. That's how you know you've grown. Amara glanced at him. You still teaching? Of course, he said. Someone's got to keep finding the next Amara Cole. She laughed. Good luck. She's probably in the back row, too scared to raise her hand. He nodded. Then I'll make sure to call on her. That evening, Amara and her mother went out for dinner, something they rarely did. A small restaurant downtown had put up a sign in the window. Congratulations, NASA's own Amara Cole. When they walked in, everyone clapped. Rosa blushed, laughing through tears. The owner said, You made this town proud, Amara. Dinner's on the house tonight. Amara smiled, humbled. Thank you. As they ate, Rosa leaned across the table. You know what I realized today? What? You didn't just build a machine, baby. You built hope. For every kid who's told they can't. Amara reached across the table and took her mother's hand. Then we built it together. Later that night, She stood on the small apartment balcony, looking up at the stars. They felt closer than ever, like old friends waiting patiently. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Morales. NASA just approved your design for Artemis 2. They're naming the filtration module after you. The Cole system. Congratulations, engineer. Amara's breath caught. She looked up at the night sky, her eyes filling with tears. Then she whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone specific, just to life, to her mother, to the universe. She thought about that little girl sitting in a classroom years ago, clutching her messy science project while everyone laughed. And she smiled, because that girl hadn't disappeared. She had just learned to aim higher. A few weeks later, the town mayor invited her to speak at a community event, Inspiration Day. The gym was packed. Students, parents, teachers, neighbors, everyone came to see the girl who made it to NASA. When Amara stepped onto the stage, applause filled the room. She waited for it to fade, then said simply, "I used to think greatness was something far away, something for other people. But now I know greatness can grow anywhere, even in the smallest home, even from the humblest hands." She paused, looking at the crowd. If you have a dream, protect it. If they laugh, work harder. Because one day, they'll call your name, and you'll realize they were never laughing at you. They were laughing at what they didn't understand. The audience rose in a standing ovation. Her mother wept openly, hand over her heart. Mr. Ellis wiped his eyes quietly. And even Mr. Talbert, sitting in the back row, stood and clapped with trembling hands. That night, when the event ended, Amara walked out alone into the cool evening air. She looked up at the stars one more time, countless, endless, glowing. A shooting star streaked across the sky. She smiled softly and whispered, "For every little girl who thinks she can't, look again." The countdown clock glowed in the darkness of the NASA Control Center. T-minus 7 hours to launch. Everywhere Amara looked, people were moving. Engineers in white coats, technicians running diagnostics, mission directors whispering into headsets. The air buzzed with focus and anticipation. And there, in the middle of it all, stood Amara Cole, no longer the shy girl from Lincoln High, but the systems engineer responsible for a piece of technology that could sustain life beyond Earth. Her badge shimmered under the lights. Artemis 2, Environmental Systems Lead. She touched it lightly, her fingers trembling just a little. "Big day," said a voice behind her. It was Dr. Morales, her mentor, the same woman who had once seen potential in a forgotten internship application. Amara smiled. "Feels unreal." Dr. Morales nodded. "Every engineer says that the first time. But when that rocket leaves the ground, it'll feel like your heart's going with it." Amara looked up at the giant window overlooking the launch site. Beyond it, the Artemis rocket stood proud and towering, bathed in the pale light of dawn. Steam curled around it like mist, and the sound of distant machinery hummed like a heartbeat. "Hard to believe," Amara murmured, "that my purifier, that my idea is in there." Dr. Morales smiled. "Hard to believe? Maybe, but not hard to understand. You earned it." Amara's eyes stayed on the rocket. "Do you ever think about how far we come from where we started?" Her mentor chuckled. "Every day, especially when I meet engineers who remind me why I started teaching." Hours later, Amara stood in the observation deck with the rest of her team. Rows of computers flickered with numbers, telemetry data, and live video feeds from the launch pad. The Artemis 2 mission was a global event. News channels were streaming it live, classrooms across the country were watching, and every social feed buzzed with the hashtag to the moon again. But none of that noise could touch the silence inside Amara's chest. It was a silence filled with awe, with gratitude. Her mother was watching from home, surrounded by neighbors who had gathered in their small living room. Mr. Ellis had told her he'd make the students at Lincoln High watch the launch during class. Even Mr. Talbert had sent a short message that morning. "Proud to have known you, Amara. Thank you for teaching me." Amara had stared at that message for a long moment before replying simply, "We all teach each other, sir." T-minus 10 minutes. Dr. Morales turned to the team. "Final system checks." Amara leaned toward her monitor. "Cole system, nominal. Water recycling test complete. Filtration unit green across all pressure metrics. A wave of relief spread through her chest. Her system, the invention she built with scraps in a classroom, refined through years of learning and perfected in NASA labs, was ready for launch. Her voice trembled as she called out, "Environmental systems, all green." The room erupted with quiet cheers. Someone patted her shoulder. "You did it, Cole." Amara smiled, her throat tight. "We did it." The final minutes felt eternal. The room went dim except for the screens. The world outside turned golden as the sun began to rise over Cape Canaveral. On the main display, the rocket's white body gleamed against the sky. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. The earth shook. The rocket roared to life, a thunder that vibrated through the walls, through the bones, through the soul. Flames burst beneath the engines, clouds of smoke billowed, and slowly, beautifully, the Artemis II began to rise. Amara's breath caught. She pressed a hand to her chest as tears filled her eyes. It was happening. Her creation, her dream, was leaving Earth. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "You didn't just build a machine. You built hope." And now that hope was climbing toward the stars. The room erupted into applause and cheers, but Amara stood still, silent, eyes locked on the screen. The rocket pierced through the clouds, a white flame against the infinite blue. For a brief moment, she thought she saw the little girl she used to be, standing barefoot in the schoolyard, clutching her homemade purifier, looking up at the same sky. They smiled at each other across time. After the launch, NASA held a small ceremony for the team. Reporters filled the press room, cameras flashing as Dr. Morales stepped up to the podium. She gestured toward Amara. "Today's success belongs to many brilliant people, but one name deserves special recognition. The engineer whose design made sustainable life support in space possible. The Cole system." Applause thundered through the hall. Amara blushed, overwhelmed. Dr. Morales handed her the microphone. "Say something, Amara." Amara hesitated. Public speaking still scared her, even now. But she took a deep breath and looked out at the crowd, scientists, journalists, students watching on screens around the world. "Thank you," she began softly. "When I was a little girl, I built my first purifier out of bottles and duct tape. My teacher laughed. My classmates laughed. But I kept building because I believed clean water could save lives." She paused, her voice steady but emotional. "Today, that same idea is part of a mission to the moon. So, if anyone's listening who's ever been told they're not enough, don't stop. The world will doubt you until it needs you." The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Cameras flashed, people cheered, and Amara stepped back, eyes wet but smiling. Dr. Morales hugged her tightly. "You just inspired a generation." Amara whispered, "Then I've done my job." Later that night, she returned to her hotel room, exhausted but glowing. She turned on the small TV. Every channel replayed the launch. News anchors called her name. NASA engineer Amara Cole, Cole system success. Black female engineer changes the future of space travel. She turned the sound down and stared at the screen silently. A little laugh escaped her lips. "Look, Mama, we made it." Her phone buzzed again, this time a video call from home. She answered immediately. Her mother's face appeared, beaming through happy tears. "Baby, you did it. Everyone here's watching. They're cheering for you. Even your old teacher from elementary school." Amara smiled. "I wish you were here." Rosa wiped her eyes. "You're exactly where you're meant to be, sweetheart. But promise me one thing. Don't ever stop looking back at where you came from." "I promise," Amara said softly. A week later, NASA hosted a televised Q&A session for students around the country. Amara sat on a panel beside Dr. Morales, answering questions from young dreamers. Kids who wanted to be astronauts, engineers, inventors. One little girl appeared on the screen, about 10 years old, with dark skin, big glasses, and hair tied up in two puffs. She said shyly, "Miss Amara, they laughed at my science fair project too. I made a solar-powered water pump, but it broke." The audience chuckled softly. Amara leaned closer to the microphone and smiled warmly. "You know what, sweetheart? My first project broke too. In fact, it broke a lot. That's how I learned how to fix things. The girl's eyes lit up. Really? Amara nodded. Yes. Every failure is a step forward. Don't stop because they laugh. One day they'll clap instead. The room went quiet, then the host smiled. That's beautiful, Amara. Any advice for kids like her? She looked into the camera, her expression gentle but firm. Keep building, she said, even when no one believes in you. Because one day, the world will need what you built. A few months later, Artemis II sent its first images from lunar orbit. One photo captured the inside of the environmental module, the Cole system, glowing softly, recycling water in zero gravity. A small plaque on the side read, "Designed by Amara Cole, for the dreamers who never stop trying." NASA sent her the image. She printed it, framed it, and hung it on the wall of her mother's house, right above the kitchen table where everything began. Rosa looked at it every morning and smiled. "That's my girl," she would whisper. "That's our stars." When Amara finally returned home again months later, the town held a parade in her honor. Children waved homemade banners that said, "Shoot for the stars," and Amara Cole, "From here to NASA." The mayor gave her a medal. The news crews followed her every step. But what meant more than any of it was when a young girl ran up to her, clutching a cardboard box filled with wires and tubes. "Miss Amara," the girl shouted breathlessly, "I built my own purifier, like yours." Amara knelt down, smiling. "Can I see it?" The girl nodded eagerly. "It's not perfect yet, but it works." Amara took the little box in her hands, examining it closely. "It's amazing. You're going to make something even better one day." The girl's eyes widened. "Really, really," Amara said. "Just don't stop." The crowd clapped again as the girl hugged her tightly. And in that moment, Amara realized something beautiful. The cycle had completed. Once, she had been the little girl with the broken project. Now, she was the voice telling another one not to give up. That evening, when the celebration ended, Amara walked out to the edge of town, where the sky opened wide and the stars shone like silver dust. She sat on the hood of her car, wind in her hair, eyes on the heavens. Somewhere out there, beyond the moon, her invention hummed quietly, turning vapor into water, sustaining life, carrying her name across space. She thought of her journey, of laughter turned to silence, of pain turned to power. And then, softly, she whispered to the stars, "This is for every child who was ever told they weren't enough. Keep building. Keep dreaming. The universe is waiting." The wind carried her words upward, past the rooftops, past the clouds, past everything human, until it disappeared into the same sky that had once held her dreams. And the stars seemed to whisper back, "Welcome home, Engineer Cole." The morning after the parade, Amara woke to the sound of her phone buzzing nonstop. News alerts, emails, missed calls. Her inbox was a flood of interview requests, invitations, and headlines that read things like "NASA engineer inspires generation" and "From janitor's daughter to rocket scientist." She blinked at the screen, half awake, still wearing yesterday's smile. For the first time in her life, the world wasn't laughing. It was listening. Downstairs, the smell of pancakes drifted from the kitchen. Her mother was humming, flipping a batch of batter like she'd been doing it all her life. "Morning, star girl," Rosa said. "You ready for another big day?" Amara rubbed her eyes. "Another one?" "The rocket already launched, Mama." Rosa grinned. "Baby, rockets come down, but your name's still up there. You think people gonna stop calling?" "Huh." The laughter between them filled the room. It felt like sunlight, warm, easy, endless. By noon, a car from NASA's public relations office pulled up outside. A woman stepped out in a crisp navy suit and introduced herself as Tanya Briggs, media liaison. "We're setting up a press tour," she explained. "Schools, TV, community centers. You're a face kids recognize now. We want them to hear your story from you." Amara hesitated. "I'm an engineer, not a speaker." Tanya smiled. "That's exactly why they'll believe you." 2 weeks later, she stood on the stage of her old high school gym. The same walls, the same faint smell of chalk dust and cleaning supplies. Rows of students filled the bleachers, restless and curious. Mr. Talbert, older now, quieter, introduced her with visible pride. Class, this is Amara Cole, once my student, now one of NASA's brightest engineers. Applause echoed through the room. Some kids whistled. Some clapped politely, but all eyes turned to her. Amara stepped to the microphone. For a moment, her throat closed up. She saw herself years ago, the small girl clutching a homemade purifier while laughter filled this same room. She took a breath. Hi, everyone. When I stood here last, I was scared. I built something out of scraps, and people thought it was funny. But the truth is, everything worth building starts out as scraps. Silence. Then the sound of pens scribbling, phones recording. I wasn't rich. I wasn't special. I was just curious, she continued. And that's all science really is, curiosity that refuses to quit. A hand shot up from the back row. A boy asked, "Did you really work at NASA?" She smiled. "I still do." Another voice. "Are you famous now?" That made her laugh. Famous? Maybe for a week. But I don't care about fame. I care about what I build. The crowd erupted in applause. Even Mr. Talbert wiped at his eyes. For once, every student in that room looked at a black woman in a lab coat and saw possibility. The speaking tour took her across the country. New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Seattle. Airports blurred together. Stages, lights, questions, cameras. Everywhere she went, she met young girls who looked at her like she was a comet fallen to Earth. They asked about science, about fear, about how to keep believing when people laughed. Her answer was always the same. Keep building. Keep learning. Don't ask for permission to dream. Soon she was invited to speak at universities, then tech conferences, then on television. The White House called next. She shook hands with the president and stood behind a podium that read STEM for all. Her photo appeared on magazine covers. Time magazine ran the headline. Amara Cole, Engineering Tomorrow. But success has a strange weight. It doesn't just lift you, it pulls you into its orbit. She was traveling so often she barely saw her mother. Her email list grew longer than her sleep schedule. And while the world saw a glowing hero, Amara started to feel something she hadn't felt since childhood: exhaustion. One night, alone in a hotel room in D.C., she stared out the window at the glowing city below. Her reflection looked back, professional, polished, powerful. But inside, she missed the quiet hum of machinery, the late nights with soldering tools and silence. The phone rang. It was Dr. Morales. "Still awake?" the mentor asked. Barely, Amara sighed. "I saw your speech tonight. You were brilliant." "Thank you." A pause stretched between them. Then Dr. Morales said gently, "Don't forget why you started all this." "I haven't," Amara said quickly, too quickly. Her mentor chuckled. "You remind me of myself when I was your age. Always proving something to everyone else. Just make sure you still build for you." When the call ended, Amara sat in the dark. Outside, the city glowed like circuitry. Inside, she realized that while the world finally respected her, she'd stopped listening to the small voice that once whispered in her kitchen, "I'll make it better." The next morning, a letter arrived from NASA headquarters. Subject: Artemis 3 Crew Selection Support Team. They wanted her to design life support modifications for the next lunar mission, a step closer to Mars exploration. It was the biggest opportunity of her career, but something in her chest ached. She wanted to say yes, and yet she longed for something more grounded. She missed teaching. She missed the joy of helping kids discover what she once discovered, the thrill of turning failure into light. She stared at the offer for a long time before picking up her phone and calling Rosa. "Mama," she said softly, "what would you do if the whole world wanted a piece of you?" Rosa laughed gently on the other end. "I'd make sure I kept enough left for myself." That night, Amara made a decision. She would accept the NASA project, but she'd also start something new, something that would give back. She called it the Cole Initiative, a program to mentor underprivileged girls in STEM. Within weeks, she began visiting community centers again, this time not as a speaker, but as a teacher. She brought equipment, lab kits, notebooks. She told the girls, "Don't be afraid of failure. It's how scientists talk to the universe." And when one of them whispered, "But we don't have fancy schools," Amara smiled and said, "Neither did I." The first Saturday of the Cole Initiative started with squeaky sneakers on linoleum and the smell of glue sticks. 20 girls filled a borrowed classroom at the local community center. Some were shy, some loud, all curious. Amara rolled up her sleeves. "All right, scientists," she said, smiling. "Today we're making water purifiers from soda bottles." The girls giggled. One raised her hand. "Like yours, Miss Amara?" "Exactly like mine," she said. "Except yours might work even better." They laughed, cutting plastic, layering sand and charcoal, watching the water drip clean. Every laugh felt like medicine, a sound that healed something old inside her. After class, a small girl named Nyla lingered. She held her project tightly, eyes downcast. "Miss Amara," she whispered, "my mom says we can't afford college. I'll never be like you." Amara knelt, meeting her gaze. "You don't have to be me. You just have to start where you are. Curiosity is free, baby girl, and it'll take you further than money ever could." Nyla blinked back tears. "Promise, promise." Months passed. The Cole Initiative spread across states. NASA helped sponsor it. Universities offered summer spots. Amara was back in her element, building, teaching, dreaming, but the balance was hard. Her days began at sunrise conference calls, ended past midnight with code debugging for the Artemis 3 systems. Sleep came in small slices between flights. Dr. Morales called again one night. "You're changing lives, Amara. But remember, a candle that burns both ends burns out faster." Amara laughed tiredly. "You always sound like fortune cookies. And you always forget to eat." Morales shot back, laughing too. 2 years later, the initiative had hundreds of students. A documentary team followed Amara through schools and labs. Headlines called her the people's engineer. But the world that once ignored her now wanted to own her. Sponsors, politicians, talk shows. Everyone wanted the face of hope. She tried to say yes to all of it, until one evening, backstage before another speech, her hands began to shake. The noise, the lights, the endless expectations, it was too much. Tanya, her old PR manager, found her sitting on the floor. "Hey, you okay?" "I'm tired, Tanya. I feel like I'm performing a version of myself that never gets to breathe." Tanya crouched beside her. "Then take a breath. The world can wait 5 minutes." They sat in silence. Outside, applause swelled as her name was announced. Inside, Amara whispered, "I just wanted to build things." Tanya smiled. "Then go out there and tell them that. No filters." On stage, she dropped the rehearsed script. She looked at the crowd, teachers, CEOs, children, and spoke from the raw place inside her. "I'm not here to be a symbol," she said. "I'm here because a teacher once laughed at me, and I learned that silence is heavier than failure. I'm here because girls like me still get told to sit down, stay quiet, dream smaller. So I built something that reached space, not to prove I'm better, but to prove that we belong everywhere." The room erupted in applause that felt different this time, not for celebrity, but for a mirror, for the idea that brilliance could wear any skin, come from any zip code. After that night, Amara began saying no more often, to sponsors, to cameras, to noise. She spent more time at the community center, sometimes staying long after everyone left, tinkering with students' projects. One evening, Nyla, now a teenager, ran in holding a letter. "Miss Amara, I got into the engineering camp. Full scholarship." Amara hugged her tight, laughing through tears. "I told you curiosity pays off." "You did," Nyla grinned. "And I'm going to build something even bigger than yours." "Good," Amara said. "That's the point." That night, as the classroom lights dimmed and quiet filled the hall, Amara stood by the window watching the moon. Somewhere out there, the Artemis 3 capsule orbited, carrying the newest version of her system. And down here, in a city classroom that smelled of chalk and hope, the next generation was already designing the future. She smiled, whispering to herself, maybe greatness isn't just about reaching the stars. Maybe it's about helping others build their ladders. The morning sky over Houston burned gold and rose, streaked with clouds that looked like brushstrokes. Amara stood on the observation deck of the Johnson Space Center, a mug of cold coffee in her hands. She had been up all night reviewing schematics for the new Mars Prep mission, Project Horizon. It was bigger than anything she had ever worked on. A crude test flight to the edge of lunar orbit, the final step before sending humans to Mars. And once again, Amara's name was written across its blueprints. She could still hardly believe it. The girl who built a water purifier from scraps was now leading a team designing propulsion systems for interplanetary travel. Everywhere she turned, people greeted her with respect. Dr. Cole, Lead Engineer Cole, ma'am. Titles that once felt like distant dreams now followed her like a shadow. But under that pride, something else stirred fear. Not of failure, but of what success might cost her this time. Later that morning, during the first Horizon team meeting, she scanned a room, 20 engineers, specialists, analysts, each one brilliant and hungry. Among them sat a familiar face, Mr. Harlan, the retired teacher who had once laughed at her science project. He looked older now. Thinner hair, softer eyes. NASA had invited him as a community educator to consult on outreach programs. When their eyes met, silence filled the room for a moment too long. Amara spoke first, voice calm but sharp as glass. Good to have you on board, Mr. Harlan. He swallowed. It's good to see you again, Amara. I owe you. She raised a hand. No debts here. We build forward. The others didn't notice the tension, but she could feel the tremor in her chest. Forgiveness was harder than rocket science. That evening, she sat in her office, the glow of her computer screen reflecting in her tired eyes. Blueprints filled the monitor, pages of equations and fuel ratios. Yet her focus drifted to the photo pinned to the wall beside it. It was of her and Nyla at the community center, both holding up tiny rockets. In the background, on the chalkboard, the words "We belong in space" were scrawled in crooked handwriting. Her phone buzzed, a text from Nyla. Miss Amara, guess what? I got accepted into MIT. Rocket you made me believe I could. Amara smiled, her throat tightening. She typed back. You did that yourself. I just handed you a wrench. Weeks passed. Project Horizon moved fast. Testing, simulations, failures, reworks. The team was relentless, and Amara even more so. She worked through meals, skipped sleep, and pushed herself to the edge. Dr. Morales noticed. You've got that same look again, she said one evening in the lab. What look? Amara asked without glancing up. The one you had during Artemis 3. The look of a woman trying to prove she's not tired. Amara chuckled, rubbing her eyes. I'm fine. I just can't afford mistakes. Not on this scale. Morales folded her arms. You can't afford collapse either. You've already proved yourself 100 times. Rest is not a weakness. Amara wanted to believe that. But deep down, she knew she wasn't chasing validation anymore. She was chasing legacy. One afternoon, NASA hosted a media event to showcase Horizon's progress. Reporters flooded the facility. Cameras flashed. Questions flew. How does it feel to lead the mission that could take humanity to Mars? One asked. Amara smiled politely. It feels like a responsibility bigger than one person. This mission isn't mine. It's everyone's who ever dreamed bigger than their circumstances. Another journalist leaned forward. And what about your teacher? The man who doubted you? He's on this project too, right? The question sliced through the air. Amara's jaw tightened. She looked directly into the cameras and said quietly, yes, and that's proof people can change. Sometimes, the best way to teach is to keep building even when someone laughs. The audience fell silent. The clip went viral that night. Mr. Harlan knocked on her office door the next morning. May I? She nodded, not looking up for her laptop. I saw what you said on TV, he began, voice trembling. You didn't have to be kind. I don't deserve it. Amara finally looked at him. Maybe not, but neither of us can change the past. What we can do is make sure the next Nyla doesn't have to fight for her right to dream. He smiled faintly, eyes wet. You became everything I used to teach about, Amara. I just didn't see it when it was right in front of me. She stood, extending her hand. Then let's make sure you see it now. Months later, Project Horizon neared launch. The control room buzzed with energy. The rocket gleamed on the launch pad, a silver spear aimed at the heavens. Amara walked through the facility, every footstep echoing years of struggle. Reporters whispered her name. Engineers saluted. But all she could think about was that day in school. The laughter, the sting of humiliation, the broken solar panel on her desk. And now here she was, watching a machine that could reach Mars. Her machine. On launch day, crowds gathered outside NASA's campus. Millions watched the live stream around the world. Amara stood at the console beside Dr. Morales, her hand hovering over the final command key. The countdown began. 10, 9. Her heartbeat matched the rhythm. 7, 6, 5. She glanced at the audience. In the front row sat her mother, older now, tears glistening. Beside her, Nyla waved excitedly, clutching a handmade sign. Black girl magic can reach Mars. 3, 2, 1. Engines roared. Fire and thunder filled the sky. The rocket lifted, slowly, majestically, breaking free from Earth's grip. Amara exhaled, whispering, for every girl who was told she couldn't. Cheers erupted. NASA's control room exploded in celebration. But Amara just closed her eyes and let a tear fall. Silent, heavy, beautiful. That night, she returned to her quiet apartment overlooking the city lights. On the table sat her old-school science fair medal, bent, scratched, forgotten. She picked it up, tracing the faded letters with her thumb. The world had changed, but that little piece of metal reminded her where it all began. A dusty classroom, a cruel laugh, and a dream that refused to die. Her phone rang. It was Morales again. You should see the footage, Amara. The whole world's talking about the launch. Kids are sending in their own Space Dreams videos. Amara smiled softly. That's all I ever wanted. Morales chuckled. You realize you just made history, right? History, Amara said, is just another word for someone refusing to quit. Weeks later, she was invited to the White House for a ceremony. The president pinned a medal to her chest, calling her a trailblazer of science and equality. Flashes went off. Applause thundered. But all Amara could think about was how far she had come from that classroom, where she was told to dream smaller. After the ceremony, she slipped away from the crowd, stepping outside into the crisp night air. The sky stretched endless above her. The same sky she'd stared at as a child through a cracked window. A voice called softly behind her. Miss Amara. She turned. It was Nyla, dressed smartly, eyes shining. They asked me to join the new research program, Nyla said breathlessly. I'm going to NASA next year. Amara felt tears prick her eyes. She took the girl's hands and whispered, then the torch is already passed. They stood there together, gazing up, a teacher and a student, a dream and its echo. Far above them, the tiny light of the Horizon capsule moved across the sky, a small dot carrying the hopes of billions. Amara smiled, whispering, keep going. The stars didn't answer. They never do, but they glowed brighter that night, as if they knew her name. Mr. Harlan knocked on her office door the next morning. May I? She nodded, not looking up from her laptop. I saw what you said on TV, he began, voice trembling. You didn't have to be kind. I don't deserve it. Amara finally looked at him. Maybe not, but neither of us can change the past. What we can do is make sure the next Nyla doesn't have to fight for her right to dream. He smiled faintly, eyes wet. You became everything I used to teach about, Amara. I just didn't see it when it was right in front of me. She stood, extending her hand. Then let's make sure you see it now. Months later, Project Horizon neared launch. The control room buzzed with energy. The rocket gleamed on the launch pad, a silver spear aimed at the heavens. Amara walked through the facility, every footstep echoing years of struggle. Reporters whispered her name. Engineers saluted. But all she could think about was that day in school. The laughter, the sting of humiliation, the broken solar panel on her desk. And now here she was, watching a machine that could reach Mars. Her machine. On launch day, crowds gathered outside NASA's campus. Millions watched the live stream around the world. Amara stood at the console beside Dr. Morales, her hand hovering over the final command key. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Her heartbeat matched the rhythm. 7, 6, 5. She glanced at the audience. In the front row sat her mother, older now, tears glistening. Beside her, Nyla waved excitedly, clutching a handmade sign. Black girl magic can reach Mars. 3, 2, 1. Engines roared. Fire and thunder filled the sky. The rocket lifted, slowly, majestically, breaking free from Earth's grip. Amara exhaled, whispering, "For every girl who was told she couldn't." Cheers erupted. NASA's control room exploded in celebration. But Amara just closed her eyes and let a tear fall. Silent, heavy, beautiful. That night, she returned to her quiet apartment overlooking the city lights. On the table sat her old-school science fair medal, bent, scratched, forgotten. She picked it up, tracing the faded letters with her thumb. The world had changed, but that little piece of metal reminded her where it all began. A dusty classroom, a cruel laugh, and a dream that refused to die. Her phone rang. It was Morales again. "You should see the footage, Amara. The whole world's talking about the launch. Kids are sending in their own Space Dreams videos." Amara smiled softly. "That's all I ever wanted." Morales chuckled. "You realize you just made history, right?" "History," Amara said, "is just another word for someone refusing to quit." Weeks later, she was invited to the White House for a ceremony. The president pinned a medal to her chest, calling her a trailblazer of science and equality. Flashes went off. Applause thundered. But all Amara could think about was how far she had come from that classroom, where she was told to dream smaller. After the ceremony, she slipped away from the crowd, stepping outside into the crisp night air. The sky stretched endless above her, the same sky she'd stared at as a child through a cracked window. A voice called softly behind her. "Miss Amara." She turned. It was Nyla, dressed smartly, eyes shining. "They asked me to join the new research program," Nyla said breathlessly. "I'm going to NASA next year." Amara felt tears prick her eyes. She took the girl's hands and whispered, "Then the torch is already passed." They stood there together, gazing up, a teacher and a student, a dream and its echo. Far above them, the tiny light of the Horizon capsule moved across the sky, a small dot carrying the hopes of billions. Amara smiled, whispering, "Keep going." The stars didn't answer. They never do. But they glowed brighter that night, as if they knew her name. That night, as she boarded her flight back to Houston, Amara looked out the airplane window. Far below, the lights of her hometown twinkled like constellations. She realized something. Success had never been the launch or the fame. It was this, coming full circle, becoming the person she needed when she was a girl. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you, universe. I get it now." By the time the plane touched down, her phone was buzzing again, a NASA alert. A new mission had just been approved. Destination, Mars. And at the top of the roster, one name glowed in bold letters. Chief Propulsion Engineer, Dr. Amara Cole. She smiled through tears. No amount of greed, no corporation, no arrogance could take this from her. The stars were still waiting, and so were the children who would follow her path. She whispered to herself, "Let's go finish what we started." The world had changed again. Months after the Horizon launch, humanity's eyes turned toward the red planet. The dream that once lived only in books and bedtime stories was now a project with dates, funding, and names. At the top of every document, one name appeared in bold, Dr. Amara Cole. Amara stood inside a vast hangar where the first Mars-bound spacecraft was being built, the Ares 1. Workers in blue suits moved around like ants, welding, measuring, testing. Sparks danced in the air. She took a slow breath, the smell of metal and ozone filling her lungs. Morales approached from behind, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You know," she said, handing one over, "it still amazes me. We're building a machine to cross 40 million miles, and you still forget to eat breakfast." Amara chuckled, eyes never leaving the ship. "I'll eat after we get this bird to fly." Morales shook her head. "You said the same thing about Horizon." And it worked. They both smiled. For a moment, they simply stood there, 2 women who had dared to reach where others said they couldn't. It wasn't about ego anymore. It was about continuity, about showing the next generation that the universe was not closed to them. Weeks later, Amara sat in a meeting with top NASA officials. Screens covered the walls, displaying trajectory arcs, weather simulations, oxygen ratios. The conversation turned technical fast, but Amara's mind drifted to something deeper: what this mission meant. "Dr. Cole," the general said, snapping her back, "we're planning to announce the mission commander next month. We'd like your recommendation." Amara hesitated. "My recommendation?" "Yes. You built the engines. You know the limits better than anyone." She looked down at the papers before her, then smiled faintly. "I have someone in mind," she said. "Someone who reminds me of why we started." That night, she opened her inbox and drafted a message. It was short, simple. To Nyla Jackson. Subject: opportunity. "Hey kid, remember when you said you wanted to touch the stars? How about we make that official? Amara." She hit send and leaned back, heart pounding. 2 minutes later, her phone rang. "Miss Cole, you're kidding, right? Commander?" Nyla's voice was a blend of disbelief and joy. Amara laughed softly. "You're the youngest candidate, but you've earned it. I'll mentor you through training. Think you're ready?" Nyla answered without hesitation. "I was ready the day you told me I could be." The following months were a whirlwind. Training began at dawn and ended long after midnight. Amara watched Nyla grow stronger, physically, mentally, spiritually. There were failures, of course, collapsed tests, burned circuits, sleepless nights. But Amara saw herself in the girl's resilience, the same spark that once drove her through ridicule and rejection. One afternoon, during a propulsion test, an unexpected pressure surge shook the chamber. The team scrambled, alarms blared. Amara Dove tore the manual override and hit the emergency release just in time. When the noise died down, everyone stared at her. She was trembling but alive. Morales ran in, eyes wide. "You could have been killed." Amara wiped sweat from her forehead. "I couldn't let her lose what I almost did." They both turned toward Nyla, who stood frozen by the console, eyes glistening. "Miss Cole," she whispered, "you saved me." Amara shook her head. "No, Nyla, you saved yourself. I just reminded you how." The story made headlines again. Hero engineer stops explosion during Mars test. Reporters wanted interviews, sponsors wanted partnerships. Amara ignored them all. She stayed in the lab, grease on her hands, fire in her soul. One night, after the others left, she sat alone by the half-assembled Ares 1. Her reflection shimmered in the polished hull. She thought about the girl she once was, standing in a classroom, holding a model made of tin cans and wires. The universe had never looked smaller back then. Now, it stretched endlessly before her. She whispered to the ship, "You're not just metal. You're every no I ever turned into a yes." Launch day approached. The facility buzzed like a living organism. Engineers running final checks, astronauts rehearsing commands, journalists setting up cameras. Amara barely slept. Every sound, every vibration, she felt in her bones. The morning before the official countdown, Morales found her on the observation deck again. "You're shaking," Morales said gently. Amara exhaled. "Do you remember the first time we talked about going to Mars?" "Of course. You said, 'One day, someone like us will be up there.'" Amara smiled. "Looks like that day's tomorrow." Morales studied her. "You sure you're ready to let Nyla fly without you?" Amara's gaze softened. "That's the point of legacy. You build something so others can take it further." Morales nodded slowly. "You're not just launching a ship, Amara. You're launching belief." That evening, Amara visited her mother. They sat on the old porch, cicadas humming, the sky glowing faintly orange. Her mother's hair had turned silver, her hands frail but steady as they held Amara's. "I saw you on TV again," her mother said. "They keep saying your name." Amara chuckled. "I didn't do it alone." Her mother squeezed her hand. "No one ever does. But baby, you carried a dream bigger than all of us. I'm proud of you." Amara felt her throat tighten. I hope I made him proud too." Her mother looked up at the stars. "He's watching. Every time you light that sky, he's right there beside you." They sat in silence after that, just listening to the wind. Amara thought of all the people who had helped her: Morales, Nyla, even Mr. Harlan. Her journey was never just hers. It was a tapestry of hearts, hands, and hope. The next morning, She stood before the Aries 1-1 last time. Technicians buzzed around her, finalizing connections, calibrating instruments. She placed her palm gently on the hull and whispered, "Fly straight. Carry them safe." Nyla approached in her flight suit, helmet under one arm. "Beautiful, isn't she?" Nyla said. Amara smiled. "You both are." Nyla hesitated. "I wish you were coming." Amara shook her head. "You don't need me on that ship, Nyla. You need me here, making sure the next generation has a runway." Nyla nodded, fighting tears. "You taught me everything I know." Amara smiled softly. "Then take it further. That's the only rule." The launch pad was a sea of white mist and blinding light. Engines rumbled beneath the earth, deep and powerful, like the heartbeat of something ancient waking up. The countdown echoed through the air. Amara stood in the control center beside Morales, her hands clasped so tight they trembled. On the main screen, the Aries 1 gleamed against the dawn. Red streaks of sunrise painted the horizon. Inside the ship, Nyla's voice came through the comms, steady and calm. "Mission Control, this is Aries 1. All systems green. Engines primed. Standing by for liftoff." Morales leaned close. "You okay?" Amara nodded slowly. "I've never been more scared or more proud." 3, 2, 1. A white blaze exploded beneath the ship. The ground shook. Windows rattled. And then it rose. The Aries 1 climbed through clouds, cutting through them like a blade through silk. Fire trailed behind it, illuminating the sky in gold and crimson. For a heartbeat, time stopped. No one breathed. No one spoke. Amara's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "She's flying." Morales placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're flying." Hours passed, then days. The launch was a success. The crew began their long journey toward Mars. Nyla's updates streamed through satellites, filling the world with hope. But for Amara, the moment of peace didn't come from the headlines or interviews. It came one evening when she walked alone to the edge of the airfield, where wild grass bent in the wind. She sat there, just listening to the faint hum of distant engines fading into the stars. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to rest. Her phone buzzed. It was a video message from Nyla, recorded aboard Aries 1. "Miss Cole," Nyla said, floating gently in zero gravity. "You once told me every great journey starts with a small dream. Well, I wanted to show you what your dream looks like now." She turned the camera toward the window. Mars filled the screen, red, vast, and beautiful. A world once unreachable, now within human sight. "We're almost there," Nyla whispered. "And every part of this ship has your name on it." Amara pressed her hand against her chest, overwhelmed. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. Months later, when the crew of Aries 1 successfully landed, the world erupted in celebration. Cities lit up with fireworks. Children dressed as astronauts ran through the streets. And at NASA headquarters, Amara stood in front of reporters once more. Though this time, she wasn't nervous. A journalist asked, "Dr. Cole, how does it feel to know your student was the first human to set foot on Mars?" Amara smiled gently. "It feels like the world finally started listening." Another voice shouted, "What message would you give to the next generation of dreamers?" Amara paused, then said, "Don't wait for permission to matter. Build what they say you can't. Even if all you have is cardboard, glue, and hope, build it anyway." The crowd cheered, cameras flashing. But Amara wasn't thinking about fame. She was thinking about the little girl who once stood in front of classroom holding a shaking model made of tin cans, and a teacher who had laughed. Weeks after the Mars landing, Amara returned to her old hometown for a school visit. The district had renamed the building Dr. Amara Cole Academy for Science and Discovery. As she walked through the hallways, she could still hear echoes, laughter, whispers, dreams. In the gymnasium, hundreds of students waited for her, their eyes wide, their faces glowing with excitement. When she stepped onto the stage, the applause was deafening. She raised a hand, smiling humbly. "Good morning," she said softly. "Once upon a time, I sat right where you're sitting, and I didn't think I belonged here." The room grew quiet. She pointed to a large screen behind her, showing photos of her childhood project. This was my first invention. People laughed at it, but I didn't stop. Because the truth is, no dream is too small. Only the belief in yourself can be. A little girl in the front row raised her hand. Dr. Cole, did you ever get scared? Amara knelt down, meeting her eyes. Every single time. But I learned that bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about building anyway. The girl smiled shyly. I want to build rockets too. Amara's voice softened. Then start today. The stars are waiting. After the event, as the hall emptied, an older man approached her slowly, leaning on a cane. It took her a moment to recognize him. Mr. Harlan, her old science teacher. He looked smaller now, his face lined with years of regret. Dr. Cole, he said quietly, I don't expect you to remember me. Amara held his gaze. I remember. He swallowed hard. I was wrong back then. I saw what I wanted to see, not what was really there. You had more brilliance than I ever gave you credit for. I'm sorry. Amara studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled gently. We all learn, Mr. Harlan. Some lessons just take a little longer. He nodded, eyes moist. You turned your pain into purpose. That's the greatest science there is. They shook hands, and for the first time, Amara felt something shift inside her. Not anger, not bitterness. Just peace. That night, she visited her father's grave again. The grass was tall, swaying softly in the night breeze. She placed a small metal model rocket beside his stone, one she'd made with her students. Hey, Daddy, she whispered. We made it. Mars. Can you believe it? She looked up at the stars, brighter than ever. Somewhere up there, the Ares 1 orbited the red planet, carrying her legacy through the cosmos. She closed her eyes, whispering, I'm not done yet. Years passed. Amara became not just an engineer, but a teacher, a mentor, a voice for the unheard. Her students went on to design ships, robots, satellites, each carrying a piece of her dream. NASA built a new generation of rockets, powered by her designs, each stamped with a nameplate. Cole Propulsion Systems. The girl who once built from scraps had changed the architecture of spaceflight itself. One evening, long after the cameras stopped following her, Amara sat on her porch again. The same one where her mother once told her that her father was watching. Now, her own daughter sat beside her, tracing constellations with tiny fingers. Mom, the girl asked, what's that star called? Amara smiled, brushing her daughter's curls. That one's Mars, where dreams go when they get brave enough. Her daughter grinned. Can we go there someday? Amara looked at the sky, voice soft as wind. We already are. The night grew still. Crickets sang. The stars shimmered, endless, alive, and waiting. And somewhere, among them, burned the name Amara Cole, forever written in the story of humankind's climb to the stars.